Jesus said to the 12 disciples, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of a righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of them will lose their reward." The Gospel of the Lord. When she walked through the door of the diner, the room fell silent. She could feel the eyes of every single person on her, and yet none of them would make eye contact. As she approached the counter, the waitress ignored her and hurried off to wait on another customer. Conversation began to trickle back into the diner, first as whispers behind hands, and then as bolder comments and pointed fingers. Rachel knew that she was the focus and that she really wasn't welcome here. The people of the town had made it abundantly clear they were good, respectable, upstanding folk who didn't want her type ruining their nice little town. She sat quietly at the counter, waiting for the waitress to acknowledge her, feeling the tension build, watching the woman find as many little busy tasks as possible in order to avoid her. It seemed to go on forever. Finally, Rachel's resolve withered beneath the glare of their eyes. She quietly slid off the stool at the counter, and with shoulders slumped and head down, she made her way through the gauntlet of their haughty looks. The young man sitting next to the door heard her mumbling as she opened the door and walked out into the hot southern summer. "Just a glass of tea, isn't that too much to ask?" Have you ever been there? Have you ever been Rachel? Looking for some small sign of welcome and getting none? If you've been in Rachel's shoes, you know it's an awful feeling. You and I are created to be in relationship with one another. And when we are excluded from community, our very being cries out at this injustice that's being done. You and I are created in the image of the triune God, whose very essence exists in the relationship of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And the image of God that resides in each and every one of us longs to connect with the image of God in all those around us, and to know that we have a place to belong. Or, if you're brave enough to admit it, you've been one of the people in the diner. I think we've all been there. Uncomfortable with the presence of the other in your midst. Not wanting to get involved or make it seem it's okay for their type to be in your community. But when we begin to build those walls and exclude others, we don't allow ourselves to be who God intended us to be. By not welcoming and making space for people to belong, we shun the image of God in the other person and wind up not welcoming Christ into our midst. It's one of my seminary professors would often say, when we draw a circle to define who is in and who is out, Jesus is always standing on the outside of our circle. Jesus has drawn the circle of God's love to include all people with no exceptions. And you and I have been included in that circle through grace, not through anything that we've done, not through our own attempts at belonging or creating. It's just a gift. And we're sent to proclaim that good news of Christ's welcome to all those around us, whether we are welcomed by them or not. Jesus talks about reward, and our reward is not something we can see or we can even feel. Because it's not about that good feeling that can come over us from doing a kind deed or a word. And it's not about some gold crown in heaven or a better place closer to the throne of God after our death. Jesus tells us that when we welcome a prophet, we receive the reward of a prophet. To be honest, that's not very comforting. Do you know what happened to most of the prophets? They died. They were killed because of their words. And their words often weren't even proven true until years beyond their death. And the reward of the righteous, someone who practices God's justice and care for all humans, it's not always much better. Because those people are often ridiculed and shunned both by society and often by the church itself. And we know how Jesus' own example of self-giving love and acceptance earned him the reward of crucifixion. So why then should we risk it? And where, again, is that reward Jesus speaks of? We risk making space for others to belong because we ourselves know that we belong through the gift of grace in Jesus. We've been given this gift. We're given then the opportunity. No, really, it's more the responsibility of sharing that gift with all people. And that reward then becomes the ability to live in relationship with each other, knowing that the image of God resides within us and within other people. By loving and making space for all people to belong, we welcome into our presence another representative of the divine image. We share just a touch more in that strangely intoxicating relationship of self-giving love that is the mystery of the Holy Trinity. James watched her as she made her way to the dusty bench at the bus stop. He couldn't explain why, but he knew he had to do something. What will they say, he wondered. Will they treat me the same way? Marge, the waitress, came over to clear the empty plate from his table. Can you believe her? Having the gall to come in here like she belongs here? Some people. Yeah, some people, he muttered. Is there anything else I can get you, hon? She asked sweetly. Yeah, there sure is, he said, his heart beginning to beat nervously in his chest. Give me a big old glass of sweet tea in one of those to-go cups. You got it, Shug, she said, and walked away. After paying at the counter, he picked up the cup of tea and anxiously made his way across the parking lot. The beads of moisture dripping off the styrofoam like the sweat beginning to trickle down his face. What if they're watching, he thought, but he knew he couldn't stop. What are they going to think? She looked up at him as he hesitantly stopped by the bench and held out the dripping cup of tea. You know they're looking, don't you? She asked. Yeah, he mumbled and scuffed the toe of his boot in the dirt. Then why? I don't know, he said. Thought you might want it. Thanks, she said, taking the cup and sipping gently at the straw. As the cold sweetness filled her mouth and ran down her throat, a smile lit up her whole face. And at that moment, James knew he didn't give a flip what they thought in the diner.